Hello and welcome. My name's Vicky Wishay. This is another episode of A Wealthy Life. And I am very fortunate to have Lisa Oliver back with me again. We had a great conversation, which was really about the idea that you need to sort of say yes and work out how later. And we went on to have a conversation off air, you missed it, about this idea of drawing sort of a circle around where you are now, and then how can you expand that by 5%, 10%, and before you know it, your circle will be twice what it was before. So how can you push yourself outside that comfort zone? And that is exactly something Lisa has done. If you listen to the last episode, we'll put the link in the show notes. Lisa went from being an employee to setting up her own business in graphic design, and has then moved on into property. And as she described herself, a 4'11" tiny blonde up against all the boy contractors, making her voice heard, has created this family portfolio for herself. But I think the story, the journey that we're going to talk about today will be really fascinating. So first of all, let me welcome you, Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Thank you very much for coming back.
Thank you for inviting me back.
And we sort of spoke in that first episode about your very first HMO, which you used the sentence which even caught me out, was I bought a brothel. And then there was that brief moment where I was going, okay, no, an ex-brothel, not an actual, you're not a madam. So how did the journey move from there? So there you are. You've converted your brothel into some beautiful rooms. You've got tenants in the HMO, which is a house of multiple occupancy. So tenants are sharing rooms. What's the next step for you there?
Well, we didn't have any plan because we actually only had the money to buy one. And we set it up. And I mean, I should say that I'm quite cautious by nature. And so I did have all of the like, oh my God, is it in the right place? How come we got it? Why did another investor not buy it? Will it rent out? All of these sort of like doubting, sort of niggling things
Yes.
in my mind. But it did rent out, and it has rented out beautifully ever since. And at that point, I had actually we'd sort of split from my business partner because I'd alluded to it in the first podcast, just because sorry, lost my thread.
You split from your first partner.
It's basically I sort of gone down a freelance path, really because our lives had gone in different directions, and we were now living in Surrey, and I actually wanted to spend more time with my kids, and commuting to London wasn't conducive to that. So I then was realizing how much money we were bringing in every month. It did take a lot of time and effort to set the HMO up, but then once you got it up and running and you made it nice for tenants, got some systems and processes in place, it was like, oh my gosh, I don't need to really be spending much time on this. So finally, I wasn't trading my time for money, and I was making money work for me. But we didn't have the capital to buy another one. But I did sort of think to myself, hang on a minute, this is much easier than doing my freelance work where I'm chasing small businesses to pay me and, trading my time for money. So I started to sort of think, well, how can I make this work? But didn't really do much for a few years because the kids were young. I was enjoying spending some time with them. But I had a hunger, and I started doing webinars, reading books, dabbling my toe in networking events, attending, and then setting up my own. And really, I think because I'm a people person, and because I needed to know how to take it to the next level, and this is advice for people listening, if it's helpful. You really to accelerate your journey. I possibly would have got there on my own, but I think it's really important to find somebody who's already done what you want to do to make that journey quicker. In doing that, I then learnt the power of leverage again. I've mentioned that a few times, but using other people's money, which was alien to me at the time. I didn't realize that you could use other people's money in a beneficial way to benefit everybody.
Yeah.
To buy property. And so that set me off on a course where I would find smelly, stinky properties. The ones that are really unloved, the ones where you want to wipe your feet on the way out rather than
Yes, I love one of those.
and transform them. And because you're buying them in the right location at a good price and with the potential to add value, either through refurb because it's smelly and dated,
Yeah,
kitchens and bathrooms and everything else, and through the act of converting them into a different thing like an HMO,
yeah,
as well as possibly adding square meterage with extensions, etc. You're then force appreciating the asset. So if you have used investor funds, if you've borrowed money from somebody else, when you then refinance after you've added value, you can pay the investor back.
So
So
you did use investor funds then?
pardon?
You used investor funds then?
Yes.
So through joint ventures or investor loans or?
Through investor loans. You would hear lots of people talking about joint ventures, and I'm quite cautious by nature, and I do know a lot of people who've done joint ventures very successessly, but I know more people who've done joint ventures where it hasn't been successful.
Yeah.
And back then, I mean, it might be different now, because I'm not as involved in all the whole training thing, now.
Yeah.
But back then, 2014, this was back end of 2013,
Mm.
when I really sort of decided to go for it and buy some more. A lot of people were doing joint ventures because they found a deal and there's no other way that they can do it. And so they would be they would do it the wrong way round in my mind. They would find the deal and then they would be trying to find money and then they'll be like, quick, let's do this joint venture.
Yeah, desperate.
Yeah, when you haven't really you might not even know this person.
Yeah.
And you're then financially linked. So it was not a route that I wanted to go down. Plus, I wasn't looking to do tons of transactions.
Yeah.
I knew I slow and steady wins the race. Also, I mentioned that I am quite cautious. Also, I don't want to bite off more than I can chew, because I did also see other investors where, all the deals are coming at once and then they're proper stressed. And
Yeah. Well, and also around that time, there was a lot fell over, weren't there? So
yeah.
a lot of the guys that had been going for it in sort of 2007, 8 started to crash in 13, 14. And so many of the people that I had sort of looked at and thought, oh, they're doing well. Should I consider that strategy? Should I consider this strategy? Consider that strategy? Just 2 years later, and they'd lost the lot, and it all been repossessed because, again, they've gone for speed.
Yes. And people can get quite competitive because it's sort of like, well, it's all about the numbers, it's all about the transactions.
Mm.
And I get that there's definitely a buzz, but that's just not for me. Also, because I was using investor funds, I wanted to be absolutely sure that I knew that I would be able to pay the investor back.
Yeah.
And thankfully I did. So that made for a good cycle, because then they would invest their money with me again. So it was about finding the right property in the right area at the right price.
But coming from a place where you knew that you had the relationship with someone who had the trust in you to back you.
Yes, yeah.
And that comes from the networking.
Comes from the networking. I mean, you have to put yourself out there. I mean, I think obviously my background also, I had built up a reasonably good reputation in my corporate life.
Yeah.
And plus we did have the brothel that was a working case study. So
yes.
I had the proof that
you can do it.
We've done this. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like I'm just going, right, I've found this, what experience have you got? None. But
Yes.
I've got a good idea. So I did have some, some background that made it, I guess, less risky from the point of view of an investor.
Yeah. So you've gone from the brothel, you've taken a break to rightly enjoy your children because they're only little ones, and then got yourself going again through networking and building relationships with other people, realizing that you didn't have the money to go again. You're using investor funds. So then you've got a few more properties under your belt. As you said, you like to go slow. I know that you've done renovations. Where's that pivot? I mean,
Oh, well,
I guess the creativity was going to nag at you, but you could have been creative in your HMOs. How did you go from HMOs to looking at renovations?
well, I was renovating all the HMOs because they were all bought as family houses and I
Right.
converted them. So they were complete renovation projects. So there was, one property that's a 3-bedroom house that I turned into a 6-bedroom all ensuite HMO, and I converted the garage but split it in half. I divided the floor plan in possibly a way that other people wouldn't have noticed or realised. Plus single story extensions out the back. There were proper back to brick refurbs.
Mm,
They were all renovation projects, and actually I wouldn't have been able to add the value otherwise.
yeah.
But that's interesting because in those days you could still just about, I mean, you can't really now to make the numbers work, but just back then, and certainly in 2009 when we bought the brothel, you could just convert the living room into a bedroom. And then you've got, then you rent it out by the room. So you could do that just then. But as time wore on, it just became, I think the market became a bit more sophisticated. And the standards got higher. And if you're looking at creating something of what professional tenants want, it's usually an ensuite and a good pressure shower.
Yeah.
So you can't just you're properly changing the use of a house.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I guess I got the bug with that, but at the same time, I couldn't just buy the nicest property in the nicest street because somebody else has already added the value. So,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
so adding value was, because it made commercial sense to add value, but also because of it, it gave me that creativity it gave me that buzz of
Yeah, your joy. I mean, you've got to find pleasure in it. There's no point doing
yeah,
property just really for the money, because I don't think you've got that sustainability if you're not enjoying it along the way. I
yeah,
love, you keep referring to them as stinky houses. I love a stinky house, and then knowing that when you've got a stinky house, you can turn it into something else. I mean, I think on this recent trip up, I've got most of the houses, at worst they're probate, but so many people now selling at probate have recognized that actually it's worth putting the money in and taking out granny's carpet and granny's furniture and putting in magnolia walls and a bit of fresh, probably just investor style carpet, but it just lifts the place. And then I'm going,
oh,
oh,
what a
it's a
shame.
shame. I wanted to do that,
Yeah,
And there was one house that I've bought for a client, and in the end, I couldn't resist it because it is so immaculate and it needs nothing, but we still got it under value. That it was worth going for. But I prefer, like you say, if I can wipe
yeah,
my feet on the way out,
hmm.
then I feel like I've got a good deal.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to do a complete renovation, but generally speaking, and it is generally speaking, but with an HMO, you're trying to make it fit for purpose for the audience.
Yes.
That does usually require a bigger renovation. But
And
if
I
you don't
think if you're going to stick it,
don't do it for the sake of it,
no. And I think if you're going to be sticking in the bathrooms, then you're doing all the plumbing and everything else. So by the time you're pulling up the floors, you're rewiring, you may as
Yeah.
well go that little bit further. I mean, certainly when we did HMOs, we took them back to brick. It was easier because then you knew it was done.
Mm.
You've done the house. And again,
And
like
you're
you,
future-proofing it. Yeah. You're
probably similar time. I don't know how big your gap was after after the brothel before you get going again, but we were doing HMOs probably 12 to 16, and we had a particular floor plan that we looked because it was sort of in a Victorian town, so we had set designs that if you went in down the gated alleyway, then it was like this, and if you went in through the front and it was a double bay, it was like that. And I only had certain streets I looked in. I knew the floor plan I was looking for and the price, and I knew where I could put the bathrooms, and we could make it so that there were 2 en suites, one private bathroom, but not, they had to come out of their bedroom door to get to it. And then the bedroom that was at the front of the house would then walk through, because there was always a kitchen beyond, a bathroom beyond the kitchen, that would be where
Yeah.
the fourth was, but always making them so that they had their own suites. Because, and I think it's a key thing that you've said there, is understanding the audience, if you like. What is it that your tenant wants, or I prefer to think of them as the client? What is the client looking for? And I always thought to myself, what would be the worst thing about sharing a house? And it would be sharing the bathroom.
Mm.
You know, that would be the nightmare for me, and that's why I went that route. So what experiences have you had with different tenant types? Have you done student HMOs, or has it always been, inverted commas, working people or stroke professionals?
For my own properties, other than the ones that we now manage, only I haven't done student HMOs, but I have worked with LHA tenants, local housing authority tenants, to diversify, and also some of the properties that were attractive were more suited to that type of tenant. The majority of them are professionals, not young professionals, because actually I get quite a lot of older professionals in those houses now. But I do have some properties where I now lease them out to charities, but back in the day, back then, when I was a lot more hands-on, I would rent to what you'd say the more vulnerable tenants. So maybe they, no other landlord would take them. They might have just sort of had a troubling childhood, just sort of lost their way a bit. They've all of them would have a backstory, and I quite liked the idea of helping them in some small way.
So they were coming to you as individual tenants that you would then place in a house?
Yeah. There was one, it was a 3-bedroom HMO, so it was a mini-mo, as they call now. And I would find the tenants, through Gumtree, through Spare Room, in the same way, but I would say, I accept LHA tenants. It was not without its challenges, that's for sure, 100%. But I have some lovely stories which warm my heart with that. But that particular property is only recently, but I have now leased it to a charity.
Okay.
And so they're taking over. They've taken over the day-to-day management. But there was another property where I was working with a council to provide homes for the homeless. And that was more challenging because of the way it was set up contractually. They were finding the tenants, but I still had the contracts with the tenants, and so I had no say in who came in.
Yes.
That was definitely more challenging and not something that I would recommend to anybody.
No. Yeah, they did one of those. I used to live in Uxbridge, and they did those in Middlesex, and they gave you a golden handshake, but basically they could give you anybody they liked. And they may or may not pay the rent, and they may or may not take care of the property, but because you've got, in a sense, like a £2,000 set of golden handcuffs, really, I think they are, you just had to put up with it. And it was like you were being paid danger money, which you may or may not need, and which may or may not cover the danger. And I just thought, that's not, I want to be able to sleep at night. That was too much for me. But we also have done the Serco contracts with refugees, and that's actually quite a nice way. So you just hand that over. And the hardest thing for that was the mortgages, because the lenders didn't like the 5-year contract, and I just don't get it at all, right? So here I am as a lender, you've got a 5-year contract. I'll be going, great, we know exactly how much money you're getting for the next 5 years. You're tied into a 5-year mortgage because I'm going to give it to you. We know we've got the affordability. We know this problem isn't going to go away. The house is never going to be empty. There's going to be no voids, and it's a repairing contract. What more could I want as a lender? Oh, I want to know that I can evict you at a moment's notice if you don't pay the rent. Well, but why wouldn't you? Because you've got all this money coming in. And it just got to the point where I think it's not quite politics, but it's politicking of it that just becomes too challenging. I don't want to play games. Let's just be straightforward. I want to house people. I think that sounds the same way as you. I had a passion for housing single mums with children, and was very disappointed when finally, I think it was about 2017, 2018, I got my first working tenant and felt like I'd failed. I was like really disappointing. Oh, you've got a job. I almost want to evict you and put back in somebody on benefits, because this idea that you're providing a home for people from which they then have that, and I suppose that ties back to the mindset stuff before. You've given them the foundation from which they can choose to grow in any direction. You're not forcing them down a line. You're not saying, oh, you've got to become like this or you've got to become like that. You're not making them get a job. You're just saying, look, here is a safe space for you and your children to grow from here. And then watching those that do. And I remember having one tenant turn around and offer to buy the property off of me.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
that's which is, you just feel like, wow, you're amazing.
Yeah, I had one guy who was literally living underneath a bench outside the station. So he was properly homeless, as opposed to sofa
surfing. Yeah.
And then he stayed in the house for years, and then he got engaged and moved out, and he was so apologetic. And I was like, no, nothing makes me happier. It's just really nice when you see that
this has been a safe space.
Yeah.
And I do think that's
different. You just make a difference in a part of their life.
Yeah. But I think that's the nice thing about property. Yes, as we've said before, it's absolutely a business. You've got to know your numbers, you've got to understand, and that danger of going too fast too soon without the experience, getting the knowledge and everything else. But knowing that you can be running a business that can actually be making a massive difference to someone's life.
Yeah. And that does apply to working professionals as well.
Yes. I mean, if they're in a relationship that's broken up. So I remember speaking to someone once and they had an HMO in Reading that was full of just divorced men.
Yeah, I had that actually. And then they would say to me, oh, can we bring our kids round? And lots of landlords would say no. And I would say, it's really important for the father to see their children and for them to come to their home. And so the fathers in the house that became friends, and then their kids became friends, and it's nice,
Yeah, it is. There's real joy in this. It's like a life-changing business, isn't it? Because it changes our lives as the landlords, as the investors. It changes the lives of our tenants, and I think that's a real joyous moment for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a people person like you are, you get your energy from people. It fuels you. Yeah.
Yes. We've got another business, but I think given how long that we've been chatting already, that we might have to wait on this one. Because there is something called Ideal Urban, where you've taken your experience as an HMO landlord and the systems that you've created and turned that into another business on the side. Because it's a bit like you're always evolving. You did the employee, the employer, the running your own business. Then you've done motherhood and brothel converter.
And two personal renovation projects, which the kids had to live through as well. So
yes, those on the side. So it's not like you're idle, but now you're sort of taking that, and it's like I'd really love to sort of talk through that evolution. And I'm quite sure you've got a lot of horror stories, because I do love a horror story. So do you think I can get you back for some horror stories?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, let's plan that in. But at the moment, I like this idea that creating a life-changing business is really what you've been doing. And I think it puts a different spin on landlords. Everything in the press is about how we're greedy and we create slums, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Like quite frankly, anything in the media, it's less than 1% of the 1% is what makes the story. But the truth is that you can make a successful business out of investing in property while making a difference to your tenants. By being a nice human being, you can still be a business owner that makes.
And you don't have to squeeze people into, you know, substandard living accommodation. No, you can make it very highly profitable at where it's winning for everybody. Actually, I know you're just about to say goodbye, but I think a significant point is my husband got made redundant again last two just over a year ago.
Okay.
And I always said I never want to be in this situation again where we're beholden to his salary.
As you were back in 2008.
Yeah. Thankfully, from growing the portfolio to being such a, you know, a good business, when it happened again, we were okay.
Yes.
I mean, it's not ideal, obviously.
Because he's around.
Because he's around. Yes, that, yes, exactly that. Yeah.
No.
But you know, we were fine.
Yes.
So properties enabled that.
Yeah, that financial security. And I know that that's something that I speak to everyone a lot. It's you've got we're and I know I was going to say goodbye, but just to pick up on this, I'm passionate about this idea of unconscious consumerism, that everything in the media is designed to separate people from their money. You have to go to work because that's what school tells you is your path. So you go to school, that's the law. And at school, you're told you have to go out and get a job. And in a job, you then have to buy things and you've got to look in a certain way. And what was it I heard the other day? Spend money on things you don't need, spend the money you don't have on things you don't need to impress people you don't even care about.
Yeah.
And it's that separation. And now with these blinking phones, everything on the phone is designed. You could be happily scrolling through, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, and there's all these ads, and the ads are, you can get slim, you can wear a nice outfit, you can buy this, you can get rich on Bitcoin. You name the advert's there. And because of all the little spiders and the algorithms, they'll be picking adverts where you have shown the slightest hint that you might be interested in order to separate you from your money. And really what we've all got to learn is to break that cycle. And the only way, bit strong there, but I think the only way that we are going to break that cycle is for us to start waking up that if we do not put our money to work, rather than work for the money and then waste it and then have to work for the money again and then waste it. And if you're lucky, you do that in a cycle where the money you work for lasts you a month. For lots, it doesn't. Until we can break that cycle and get ourselves into the state where we can put our money to work and then have that resilience that you've got, that, you know, whether you want to take time off to be with your children, you could afford to do that. And if your husband, all right, he's been made redundant, but he might choose to take a career break. You can do that because you can afford it and be in that position because you have, as we said in the last one, taken challenges. You've said yes to opportunities and then worked out, what am I going to do about it? And then gone, oh, okay, so I've done that and it works. Now I'm a bit stuck. How can I go again? And it was through, okay, well, I need to make sure that I buy deals that I can add value to, so that if I go to someone to borrow money off of them, I can afford to borrow the money off of them and I can be sure that I can pay them back. So doing that, waking up to the finances of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So look, we will do a goodbye now. Otherwise I'll ramble on about something else as well. So I just want to say to everybody, I hope that, again, you've got a lot of wish out of this call with Lisa, that her journey has inspired you, that it doesn't have to be get rich as quickly as possible. It can be take your time, plan your strategy, learn on the way, learn from mentors, picking up on what we said before about growing your network. There have been some great hints in here about how you can follow a similar path to Lisa and to others. It's not about getting 100 properties. It's about getting the right number of properties that mean that you have enough money, more than enough money, so that you feel financially secure, but also that you can still sleep at night, that you can also still do a good job, so that you can run a business that is life-changing for others. And I think that's what I've picked up from you this time, Lisa. And I knew I was inspired about you anyway, and you've just like turned the flame up a bit more. I just find that really inspirational, and thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you, Vicky. Yeah, it's been lovely to have this afternoon chatting with you.
So look, let's get something else in the diary and let's talk about ideal urban and the systems that you've created and how you're helping other people, because I'm sure there are going to be even more lessons in there, particularly for people, not just doing HMOs, but particularly for people who need to understand more about the management side of property. So thank you once again. And I look forward to speaking to you again.
Super, lovely. Look forward to it. Thanks, Vicky.
Thank you.